Welcome to the Thornton Review.
The show designed with you in mind. If it's important to you, it's important to us.
I'm Pueschel Schneier, executive producer and manager of the Thornton Review. Thank you for tuning in. Our guest host today is John Roberts. John is a retired Navy lieutenant commander and current chairman of the Escambia County Republican Party. So, John, you've been on the show a couple of times now. It's the first time you've been a co-host, and I really thank you for coming on. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Pueschel. Yes, I have been the chairman of the Republican Party for almost 6 years now, and the election integrity is a big issue with us, and we say make it easy for people to vote and hard to cheat.
Thank you for that. I agree. So it's great to have you on, as always. Thank you. Election integrity is critical for maintaining the legitimacy of our election processes and ensuring public trust in the electoral system. Transparent election integrity leads to positive election outcomes, political stability, and confidence in government institutions. Today, we have Escambia County Supervisor of Elections, Robert Bender. Robert, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Pueschel. I was a county commissioner for the last 6 years, and on January 26th, the governor appointed me to fill the vacant position left by David Stafford. And so I've been in this now for a couple months, but not my first foray with elections. I was on the canvassing board for the last presidential election, so this will actually be my sixth election as part of this board and running elections come August next month. So excited to be on. And of course, everyone knows how well David ran the office and that elections were safe, secure in Escambia County, and I look to continue that.
Thank you for that. I think everybody really admired David Stafford. We miss him, but we're happy to have you on.
The good news is he's still involved. It's Department of Homeland Security, 8 states, Kentucky South.
Wow.
So it's great that he gets to share his knowledge and expertise with everyone in the Southeast.
That's amazing. So we're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we'll begin our discussion with Robert Bender, Escambia County Supervisor of Elections. Alpha Fence Company can install any type of fence. When you call and mention the Thornton Review, you'll receive a $100 discount on your fence. They also offer military discounts. Vinyl fence, wood fence, aluminum fence, chain link fence. If it has the word fence, Alpha Fence Company can do it. 850-586-8020. 850-586-8020. There is no government-funded program that can guide a man's thoughts. Only God can do that. Hi, I'm Pueschel Schneier, executive producer and manager of the Thornton Review. I'm also the secretary of the Escambia County Republican Party. I want to urge you to conserve the integrity of our constitutional republic and vote Republican. For reliable information you will always count on, watch the Thornton Review. We interview local elected officials. You will not get this information anywhere else but the Thornton Review. Robert D. Bender is currently the Escambia County Supervisor of Elections. Robert grew up in Pensacola, Florida. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration from Rhodes College and MBA from Goizeta Business School at Emory University. Robert was elected to the Escambia County Commission District 4 in 2018 and again in 2022. During that time, he obtained Certified County Commissioner and Advanced County Commissioner 1 and 2 certificates. In 2024, Robert sought the governor appointment to Escambia County Supervisor of Elections. He is currently working on his Florida Certified Election Professional Certification. Robert, thank you for having on.
Yes.
I mean, thank you for coming on. It's nice to have you on.
I'm excited to be here.
Good. So we're going to start off with some questions. And my first question is, how secure and up-to-date is the technology Escambia County uses to maintain accurate voter rolls and prevent duplicate or fraudulent registrations?
So the state of Florida uses the entire same system across the state. So if you were to go to Santa Rosa, it would update when it gets to that record. So in terms of they're updated in real time, and same thing of when you go to vote. So an example I give is say you do have a vote by mail ballot, you've mailed it back to us, and you're tracking your ballot, and it shows that it hasn't been received by our office yet, and you want to make sure that your vote counts. You can go to your early vote site or precinct and vote, and what we'll do is that when we get it in, we'll go to scan it, and it's all scanned in real time. Mm-hmm. And if we see that you've already voted, then we set it off to the side and we don't count it. So,
wow.
And that's what allows us to do the early votes is that way, if you go to one early vote site, you can't go down the street and go to another one. So that all gets updated in real time.
Okay. So do the mail-in ballots have a number on them that represents the name of the voter, the registration?
So it's printed on the envelope, the return envelope. It has a barcode that we scan to pull it up, but it does contain the voter's information on it so that we have that information. So we check all that. We check their signature and everything like that before we open them. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing that for the last couple days now that ballots have gone out and we're starting to get them back in. We'll validate those, and then we'll put them in a batch. We do batches of about 300, and then so tomorrow after we do the LNA, so our logic and accuracy test is actually tomorrow. That signifies that we have certified equipment that we can start running an election. So we'll actually start canvassing those votes next week.
Mm-hmm. So what's the name of the test tomorrow?
Logic and accuracy test.
Okay, can you explain that to us?
Sure. So that's we have test decks of ballots that have been predetermined, so we know what to expect in terms of results. We make sure there's a good enough variety between the candidates that if there's some issue with the ballot that say my votes are being tallied as John's votes, we would see that happening. And so we've already tested it, the live ballots and things like that through our system of the ballots that are going to be used. But now we go and we'll use 10 machines out of our 80 precincts, and we'll run those test ballots through there, make sure that the results upload correctly. Mm-hmm. So everything that is used on election day or to run the election is tested in a public meeting. And then so we make sure that those results come in the way that they're supposed to. And then we even upload that test to the state. Mm-hmm. Once that's done, we seal all the equipment until election day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So election integrity. How do we know as voters that our vote counts and that we have fair and safe elections? I think you may have just explained that.
I did a little bit. And it's funny. Again, when I came to the REC and talked about some of the misconceptions and things, one of the things that I mentioned was, that vote by mail ballots only get counted if the election's close or something like that. And I was like, surely no one really thinks that. Well, sure enough, a couple days later, I had somebody ask me that. And the thing is that we'll start canvassing those vote by mail ballots next week. Mm-hmm. And hopefully by the time that we planned it out well enough that by election day we have all the ones that have come in before that already counted, ready to go. We also have that early vote, the 10th through the 17th of August. All those results will be captured. So within 30 minutes of the polls closing, I have to release that to the state and to the public. Mm-hmm. And we break it down by how many ballots we've received in each. So you can go online and see how many people have early voted, how many people have voted by mail. And we distribute those to show that we've actually counted the vote by mails and things like that. The great thing that we've implemented this new system called Clear Ballot. And this is an audit system that we use to make sure that the ballots, as they were run through the tabulator, get run through this independent system. It's not connected to our ES&S machines or anything like that. And we make sure that we get the same results. And if there is any issue, we look into that and figure out why.
Okay. Does it go through one machine, but it has two different things?
It does not. They're separate machines. So it's run through. So the ballots and the vote by mail, we'll run them through our ES&S 950 tabulator, which is a high-speed tabulator. I mean, we can do 6,000 ballots a day when we're doing our vote by mail. But then part of that process is, as that batch of about 300 gets run, it then goes over to this other machine. It's more of a scanner, so it captures an image of each one, and then the ballots get boxed and stored for the retention policy. So what we do is we make sure that we've captured the same number of images between the two. We don't know what the results are as we're doing this, but if we expected 1,000 ballots if we counted 1,000 ballots on one machine, we want to make sure that the second second set audit has 1,000 as well. So we are checking that, but we don't know the results, and then we do that through the audit.
And the machine also captures the number which corresponds to the voter.
So we don't have any way to identify a voter on a ballot.
But you know if they voted twice. You know if,
well, we do because they wouldn't be issued a ballot, or we wouldn't log that vote by mail-in. We'd set it off to the side before it would ever reach the tabulation room.
Okay, so that's not done by a machine.
No,
Okay.
it's not. That's done by staff. So we only have about 15 full-time staff that we use in the office, and that's everybody from warehouse personnel to IT to the front office ladies that are processing our voter registration and vote by mail requests.
So when the vote by mail comes in, somebody is comparing the numbers to make sure that.
Yeah, so somebody
The name doesn't
will scan it to make sure the name's printed on there. You'd be surprised how many husbands sign their wives' envelopes and the wives sign the husbands, and so we have a process for that. As long as both get returned, then we can process them.
Right.
But we'll make sure that the voter has a request on file. And then we compare the signature to what's on file. And if there's any question about that, or if they didn't sign it, we have the ability to do a cure affidavit. So we'll contact the voter, and that's why we ask for their contact information on those envelopes, so that this all happens before the envelope's ever opened. And if it doesn't get cured, or we have some other question, we don't open the envelope. And so it'll go to the canvassing board, and we start processing those and opening the ballots. Once they're taken out of the envelope, there's no way to track whose ballot that is.
Okay.
And that's something that I'm going to stand by, is voter anonymity. I think that's very important. There are things that we could do, like putting a small QR code just that identifies the ballot style. Too many questions as to what that could be. So I'm not going to use that, just so that people can be assured that we aren't tracking ballots. When we put the vote by mail ballots together and put them in an envelope, we just grab a stack of ballots. We use all and it's just in a random order. So I have no way to track a ballot and who uses it. Just like on election day, they rip a ballot off the top of the pack and they hand it to the next person in line, and there's no way to match that ballot with whatever voter slip has come over. So so voter anonymity is very important, and that's actually one of the things that we as supervisors felt was important as it came to spoiled ballots, that we don't really even want to handle a ballot after we've given it to a voter. So I had one of our poll workers who came over from Louisiana, and when she voted in the Triple P, she goes, I was so surprised that I got to put the ballot into the tabulator.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that we do have our poll workers that there and observing that can help. We want them to be close enough to where they can assist you if needed, but not close enough to where they can see how you voted.
Yeah.
And of course, you can
I've
always flip
noticed
it
that.
over. It can go upside down, inside. I mean, however you want to put it in the machine, as long as it's flat, it'll take it.
Yeah.
And so that was important to us, is that we don't do it. So we do have new processes and procedures for spoiled ballots and returned ballots, and we've created individualized envelopes that the voter can put those in. And just like those vote by mail ballots, those don't get opened after they're sealed until they get destroyed. And so that's, again, something that I thought was very important. I have made a couple changes as it comes to training our poll workers. So there's a mandatory overview class that each poll worker has to take once per election cycle.
Okay.
But as it relates to their individual duties and what they're doing on election day or during early voting, they have to be trained on that per election. So some of them will have 3 trainings this year on what they're doing. but I noticed that we used the same seals for training that we use for deploying the equipment. So I put in a process that we now use a different color seal. That's a training seal that we can use them, and no one questions if that was a seal that was supposed to be used for equipment that's being deployed on election day. So just something small like that, where the
So
perception.
where does the seal go? I'm
The
sorry.
seal goes on various equipment to make sure that
Okay.
it's not been tampered with or opened. And so we have multiple seals on our machines as they go out.
Okay.
It'll protect the thumb drive that's in there. When we close the lid, we seal it to make sure that the lid hasn't been opened in addition to a lock. Same
Okay.
thing with our ballot boxes. They have a key lock, but then we also seal them during transport and things like that. So again, that way you know that they haven't been tampered with. But again, on those seals, we've used a different color for training, so that way no one can say, like, why are all these seals in the trash can? Well, those were from training. Well, those are the same one, So we thought that was a good step. And then we've also done a couple other little things because we have upgraded software and equipment that David purchased last year.
Okay.
We were able to do a couple things. One, for provisional ballots, the clerk can check a box next to the precinct. And then that way, when the voter if the voter went and tried to put it in the tabulation machine, it wouldn't accept it. And that was something, I know in 2020, we probably had 4 or 5 ballots that made their way into the tabulator when provisional voters came in. Things get hectic. Voter might forget the process.
What went through? I'm sorry, 4 or 5 what?
Provisional ballots, so people that have some questionability about their access or their eligibility to
So
vote.
they made it through?
So they made it through.
Is that a yes or no? Is that good or bad? What do you mean?
We don't want that.
Okay.
And so that's why we've added
you caught
this.
it.
No.
Okay.
It's just that they let us know that it's happened.
Okay.
But there's no way to go in and pull that ballot once it's gone through. And so that's why putting this box that the clerk can check prevents that from happening. And then we've
Okay.
even done that a step further for the August election, that for all of our vote by mail ballots, we've put a V in this box to signify vote by mail ballot. So if somebody brought that into a precinct or early vote location and tried to put it in the machine, it wouldn't be accepted. So we're actually going to showcase this tomorrow in the logic and accuracy test, that we'll have one of those ballots marked with a V that we'll try to put it through the machine, and it'll show that the machine won't accept it
Because it's a vote by mail.
because it's a vote by mail.
And the machine is only taking in-person voting.
Is only taking the ballots that we've given them in the precinct. So,
Okay.
and again, if someone's has a vote by mail ballot, they can surrender that when they come in to vote at the precinct.
Okay.
But again, just an extra way that we can make sure that someone's not bringing a ballot in and putting it into the machine.
So if somebody voted by mail
Mm-hmm.
and then they came into the precinct to vote, would that be caught?
It would, because we would have logged in the fact that we had received their vote by mail ballot, and so that gets updated in real time. I mean, as they're scanning one in, that file's getting updated.
So as they're presenting their ID to vote, the poll worker would say, "I'm sorry, you've already voted. We already have your mail-in
Correct.
vote."
Correct.
And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, well my husband must have sent that in, or something, something, whatever."
Right, whatever the excuse.
Yeah.
Now, if they're adamant that it's not them, then they could vote provisionally. That goes to our office to be reviewed. We would look at, we retain the envelopes of the vote by mail, so we would pull that envelope, we would do all of our due diligence research, and then it comes to the canvassing board to see what to do.
Great. Okay.
Now, who are these people that are actually counting these vote by mail ballots? Are they just a mixture of Republicans and Democrats? Or are they just professional staff members, or who are they?
So that run the actual machine for the vote by mail is staff. But we do have a mix of poll workers that come in, and so we'll remove the ballot from the envelope, and it's tri-folded. And so these workers will lay them out flat, unfold them. Again, we try to do it quick enough that they're not, let's see who this person voted for. Again, they don't know whose it is, but still, we don't want them to really look at the results. And so we say, unfold them, lay them flat.
Not even a quick glance.
Not even a quick glance.
You have to have discipline
Yes.
to do that. I used to count money at church.
Yes,
And it's like, I don't want to know, I do not want to know who gave this amount.
right.
So, yeah, you have to discipline yourself not to look.
It is, and again, we're trying to get through. I mean, we have thousands of ballots that have come in that we need to tabulate, so we are in a little bit of a rush. But what we do is we bring it in by a batch. We'll open that, So we know how many are in that batch. We open them, lay the ballots out, then we count the ballots to make sure that we had the number of ballots, that we had the number of envelopes. You'd be surprised how many people will actually send in a blank envelope or something like that. And so we're looking for those things as we're opening the envelopes. So from there, it goes to a separate room where they're run through the tabulator and then through the clear audit. So again, the running and the tabulating of the votes is done by election staff. The ballots that are being unfolded and laid out on a table, we have about 10 or so poll workers that come in and help us do that.
So even the blank one, I mean, you probably wouldn't notice if it's blank if you're disciplined not to look at it.
Correct. So, right. Now, they may say, hey, this ballot is damaged. We don't know, and we'll say, well, we're going to try to run it, because ultimately what we want to do is run the ballot as it's given to us, that the voter voted. But if for some reason that there's a tear in the ballot, there's some extraneous marks that it doesn't pick up a vote, then
because people don't know where to put their mark a lot of times. They'll put an X beside the name and not even in the circle, or they'll put a check mark kind of in the middle where it's kind of, is it closer to this guy or this guy?
Right. So when the machine reads it, it'll tell us what the fault is, if it's an overvote, if it's an undervote, something like that. And so we look at the ballot to see if we can determine the voter's intent. And so the state just came out with a long set of rules on how we can do that now, that we'll try to find the voter's intent. And if we can determine the voter's intent, then we actually duplicate the ballot. And there's a process that we use to make sure that we can match the duplicated ballot to the original, and then it gets run through and counted.
Yeah. So you've just explained accuracy.
Yes.
And that how you ensure that every vote is counted correctly and that the results reflect the true will of the voters. By the machines, by making sure that they're not put through. So, for instance, if somebody has a box of mail-in ballots, and they put it through the machine, and does it stay in the machine, or does it go back into another box?
No, so it's think about like your SAT, ACT. It's a high-speed scanner. It's just looking for ovals that are colored in, so it knows
but where
the
do
timing
those ballots
marks.
go?
So those are retained for 22 months after certification, and
could they be put in a box and then put back through again? Is that possible?
Well, it could be. But but not the procedures that we have, right? I mean, there's not like a mark that goes on the ballot to not let them be run again, because then that would make it very difficult if we had to do a recount, right? So these are the machines that we use during recounts, things like that. So, but our process
it is securely
placed
in a different spot. It's not going to go through the machine again. Okay.
And so what we do is it goes from being tabulated on the 950 to being run through the clear ballot, and then it goes into a storage box. Okay. So that's the process.
Different kind of box.
A different kind of box. Those get sealed
and
put away.
Mistaken to
no,
go back there.
right,
Okay.
right. And again, we know the batches and how many we're, and so this is the things that we're looking for. But no, after it's run through, it does get put into a storage box. Those boxes get sealed, those seals recorded and stored in our storage facility. So they don't get rerun again.
Great.
Now, as far as other ballots that come in on election day or early voting, how do we know the machines are counting? You do the logic and accuracy test, but are there other tests that you do to make sure the machines are counting the ballots accurately?
So what we do is like I said, we have this clear ballot, which is our audit system. So a couple times during early voting, we'll go open the ballots that have already been returned to the office. We collect those every night, and we'll run them through the machine. And then once we go to audit, we compare the two, and they're done by type of vote. So we have 3 ways to vote. You have early voting, vote by mail, and election day. And so that's how the clear ballot breaks out those results. And so we compare the results by that style to what we have on record. And so that's actually how we were able to find that we had a discrepancy in March. It was we determined it was human error, where we had actually run one ballot twice. So one ballot. So what happened was that when you run them through the machine, certain ballots get kicked up to the top that aren't red.
Okay. Right.
And then you run them again. You may just flip it around. There may be some other reason it's not getting read. Best we can determine is that one ballot got read, one didn't. The one that didn't get read got put in the red pile, and we ran the other one again. It didn't change they both voted for the same person. It was easy to do that in that election. But at the end, the audit caught that we had one more ballot style than we were expecting, and one fewer ballot style on another one. And so when we went to, it was fun. We actually had a lot
one discrepancy is not bad.
Correct. So we actually had three for the entire election. The next one, we determined that we probably just pulled the wrong ballot style from the stack when we sent them the ballot. And the third was someone who had actually moved, called in and changed their address, and then they had already sent their vote by mail ballot in. So we were expecting a different precinct than what we got. So those were the three that we had for the March, which overall is a great result, far less than the margin of error that the state gives us.
And the fact that you caught it.
Right.
And you're admitting it.
Yes.
And it was corrected.
As much as we can. It's again.
But it did not affect election.
Right. It wasn't
whatsoever,
people who weren't allowed to vote. Again, the two that we read one twice, we realized that they all voted for the same person, and then the other one was, it was all the same ballot style in March, so there wasn't that someone voted for a city council race that didn't have the ability to do that.
Well, we're all human. We're human,
Right.
and if that was human error, we're people.
Yeah.
We're allowed to make mistakes as long as they're honest mistakes and they're not devastating
Correct.
mistakes.
Well, so when I did the 2020 election, I was part of the Jennifer Braher PC Wu recount.
Okay.
And so on election night,
Wow.
Jennifer had a 5-vote lead over Councilman PC Wu, and so we had to do a recount that weekend, and so there were actually, by the time we finished it, there were 2 ballots that had been read as overvotes. But when we looked at those, and overvote is when more than one bubble's marked in, or there's a extraneous mark, something like that. We were able to determine that the voter's intent was a vote for PC, and so we showed that to Jennifer. David did, and she goes, "Yeah, the voter's intents for my opponent," and so that's what dropped it from 5 to 3.
Wow.
And so,
So
but
she
again,
won by 3 votes?
She won by 3 votes.
Wow.
And but again,
That is a democratic society.
Right.
The majority rules.
Yes.
It doesn't.
Small d democratic.
Yeah. Overall, we're a federalistic republic, but
Right.
countywide,
Yes, exactly.
it's a democratic process voting countywide.
And so, we had some military overseas voters that have 10 days after the election to get their ballots back. Federal law that does that, and there were a number of them that were in those 2 precincts, but we didn't get any more back that affected it. So the 3-vote win stood.
Yep.
But
So-
that's just, I'm just trying to say is that just shows that the machines were accurate. And talk about accuracy of voting. This clear ballot, previously when we did an audit after the election, we would pick one race from 2 precincts and we would hand count them. And it was a lot because you're having to dive through all these ballots to find, 2 ballots out of an entire early vote site on a Tuesday or something like that. But I would say every one that I've been a part of, when we got the hand count for the audit, it did not match what the tabulator said. And again, that might just be human error. Somebody puts it in the wrong pile, makes the wrong count. So we wouldn't tell them what we were looking for. We'd just hand them back and say, nope, try again. They'd go through the piles, fix anything.
Okay.
But now for this clear ballot, the state requires you to do a higher percentage if you're using an automated audit. But we actually do 100% of the races, 100% of the precincts to make sure that there's an accurate count. And if there's a discrepancy in any of those, we're going to look into why.
Well, I want to talk about security, but we're going to take a commercial break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to know how the election process is protected from fraud, tampering, and cyber threats.
Okay.
But we want to remind our viewers that the Thornton Review is a civic engagement show with a purpose to spread awareness by interviewing local elected officials and professionals. As an elected official, candidate, or professional, if you would like to request to come on the Thornton Review, please message us on our Facebook page, The Thornton Review Show, or email us at thethorntonreview@yahoo.com. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Robert Bender, Escambia County Supervisor of Elections. Alpha Fence Company can install any type of fence. When you call and mention the Thornton Review, you'll receive a $100 discount on your fence. They also offer military discounts. Vinyl fence, wood fence, aluminum fence, chain link fence. If it has the word fence, Alpha Fence Company can do it. 850-586-8020. 850-586-8020.
Hi, I'm Pam Childers. I'm the elected clerk and comptroller, and I invite you to watch the Thornton Review for current information. It's best to stay informed, and you can do that at Thornton Review.
There is no government-funded program that can guide a man's thoughts. Only God can do that.
Perfect.
And we'd like to know, how is the election process protected from fraud, tampering, and cyber threats?
Sure. So, of course, the cyber threats are something that's new to us. I say new, but really it was something that David really helped implement. So we have a great team of cybersecurity. Also, elections are considered critical infrastructure, so we have additional resources and things like that when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, we know that as with any business or entity, that that cyber is a threat, right? Mm-hmm. So we have made sure that we've put things in place that prevent bad actors from gaining access to our system. But of course, the great thing that I love about what we do in Florida is that if we lost all power and had to go back to the Stone Age, we could still run an election on election day, right? So we have a backup of a paper register that voters would be able to sign in. We already have the ballots printed, so they could still vote. They put them in a bin, and we tabulate them later. And so if we have to completely disconnect,
count them if we absolutely have to.
Right.
Talk about going back to the Stone Age.
Yes. We are required by the state statute to use an electronic tabulator. Mm-hmm. And again, that's where I say that it's typically more accurate than that hand count. You were asking in the commercial break that, yes, eventually they match that, but it's just that historically the ones that I've been a process of, they didn't match the first time. Again, just because there was some human error or something like that was caused. But I would say physical security is a big part of what we do. And that's something that I've talked to all of our poll workers about. Again, we talk about that person who's standing by the tabulating machine, keeping an eye on things to make sure that someone's not coming in and putting extra ballots in or something like that. Now, again, we have ways of identifying our ballots. And so we would know, I say we have redundant procedures to our redundant procedures. So we know how many voters have checked in. We know how many ballots we started with. We know how many ballots are left. We
know
keep
how many
track of
voters
everything.
are registered, for one thing. If you have more ballots than registered voters in a county, then something's really wrong.
Right.
But that probably never happens because not everybody votes.
Well, again, we're only getting election day ballots for the percent that we think are going to show up on election day. And so we do a ballot on demand for early vote. So when you go to that early voting location, you check in, your ballot gets printed right there. So we just have the ballot stock available for the vote by mail. We have that V on there, and we have a stack of vote by mails that we anticipate to use. So it's a much smaller percentage of what we actually have. in Escambia County and really across Florida, the three methods of voting are almost split pretty evenly. Of course, in 2020, we did see that higher vote by mail with COVID. But now in 2022, we did see Election Day retake the majority of it. But it's almost split evenly across 1/3. So, but yeah.
It seems like when I started voting at 18, vote by mail was mainly for military overseas. I don't even know if they had it back then.
Back then, it was more absentee. You had to show that you were going to be gone.
Absentee ballot.
You'd have to sign something that you were going to be out of the county on Election Day. So it really
but
wasn't
it was more
until
rare.
It really wasn't until like 2004, 2006
Wow.
that started picking up a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, changing the law.
And I don't remember early voting either. You
Nope.
voted on Election Day
Yep.
or you didn't vote.
Right.
I guess with population growth,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it easy. It makes more sense to allow people to vote, because if literally everybody had to vote on Election Day nowadays,
Right.
I mean, it would take 2 or 3 days.
Well, we'd have longer lines.
Yeah,
We'd
you'd
have
have
to
like
open
72
more
hours,
locations.
literally.
You would have a higher cost with equipment, everything
Yeah.
like that. So, Escambia County, we have 72 locations, 80 precincts. So we have some co-located. We have we call it the trifecta over in East Hill at the Bayview Center, where you have 3 precincts that are in one. But those 3 combined are still smaller than some of our other precincts.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's why we say we have 72 locations, 80 precincts. The last one that we added was in the Beulah area, precinct 115 last year, to accommodate for the growing population of Beulah, and really just to make sure that those precincts don't get too big and that
The
you don't have these long
population
blades.
explosion
Yes.
of Beulah. So.
But I will tell you is that one, we have a number of requirements statute wise to do voter maintenance. So we actually had to do that right after the March primary, and it had to be completed within 90 days before the election. So we had until May 22nd to complete it. And we go through and we look at all those national change of addresses and match them against our voter rolls and see what we have. Also, if we send you a mail and it gets returned, that starts a process of, hey, what's going on? Are you still at this address? And then you end up being moved to an inactive status. And then if you are inactive and don't vote, change your registration, update your registration or request a vote by mail in 2 general election cycles, you get removed from the rolls. So we actually have about 25,000 fewer voters right now than we did in 2020.
Okay.
And we have about 47,000.
25,000 fewer?
25,000
That's because
fewer.
they passed away or moved?
They've passed away, they've moved. Right, something like that. But of course, we've also had a lot that have been added.
Right.
But we have about 47,000 that are in this inactive status. And so over the next 2 general election cycles, if they don't do something to say that, yes, we're here.
So they're registered, but they don't vote? Is that what inactive is?
So inactive, if they showed up to a polling location and presented their ID and said, yes, I'm signing an affidavit that I do live at that address, then they would be eligible to vote.
Okay.
It is a little bit of an extra process.
Yeah.
Again, they've already registered to vote. It's just that we had something that flagged in the system. But if they don't do it in 2 election cycles, then they get removed completely, and they would have to re-register to vote in order to cast a ballot. So,
Okay.
but again, 47,000 of those right now. But part of that is what the state has done to change the legislation. Just in the second half of 2023, we put 19,000 inactive voters, and that was because usually if we would send you something that says, hey, checking in, make sure you're still there, if you didn't respond, there wasn't really anything we could do. They changed that to now, if you don't respond, we can start that inactive removal process.
Okay. So if they're inactive, if they're not voting, they go through a process to be removed from the voter rolls?
Yes.
Even if they're living there and...
Right. If they haven't voted or haven't given us some affirmative action that they're still there and that's where they are,
So they just get removed.
then it gets
That's good.
removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But active military now have some special rights now.
Right.
don't they?
So they can stay registered where they, if they get deployed, they can stay registered
their permanent address.
at their permanent address or where they were last registered to
Right,
vote.
okay.
And so we actually have a very large number of the UCAVA voters, those military overseas voters, for the size of our county. But we sent almost 3,000 ballots out that UCAVA way with the military overseas voters.
So a person might be living in a home and have a active duty military person who's registered to vote at their address, but they may not even know them. But that is legal because of the privilege we give those who are active
Right,
duty
under federal
military.
law. Yes.
By
That
federal
makes
law,
sense.
not
Yes.
local. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and again, and that's, I think that's a great way, because you don't know where they're going to be deployed or anything like that. Now, we do reach out to those voters to make sure that they're still eligible to receive that. And so that's one way that we make sure that those roles are clean as well.
Yes.
So auditing. Are routine post-election audits performed and to verify the accuracy and the results and identify any discrepancies?
They are. So there's a whole statute on the audit. I even talk about, I would say this was where I had I realized a big part of what I do is that not only am I there to oversee the election, but I'm there to represent the voters to make sure that we follow the law in doing that. So in March, when we went to do the audit, we had an employee who had left who would typically do things like post notices around the county of when we were doing our audit. And so when we started that process, we realized that hadn't been.
To be posted a certain amount of time before publicly.
It does, but it also has to be
Various ways.
physically posted in 4 locations around the county.
Gotcha.
And so this was Good Friday. All the government buildings were closed, and so I had to look at the judge and say, Judge, we have a week to do this. We're going to have to come back next week once we post these physical
Yeah.
notices on the buildings and
So you had to
and do
postpone it.
So we had to postpone
Yeah.
it, which was fine. We were starting the process early in our window to do that. We had already done everything, though. We knew that we had a good, like I said, we had 3 discrepancies, and we had already researched those.
Who does the audit?
Staff.
Okay.
So our election staff does that. Like I said, we've gone away. We're not doing the manual audit like we did before of the one precinct one race for 2 precincts. We're doing 100% of the precincts, 100% of the races, looking for any discrepancy between the 2.
And is anyone from the public allowed to view
Yes.
the audit?
So those are all
To look
public
at-
meetings,
to look
and
over
they
your
can
shoulder
come and
do the
yes,
audit and look at
yes,
the ballots and see to make sure that the audit is
yes,
transparent.
yep.
Because transparency is key.
It's key.
People want transparency, and that's what they look for in our elections. And anyone who's an elected official, they're looking for transparency.
Right. And so we actually had, speaking of cyber, we had our cyber navigator who came to our logic and accuracy test in March, and he walks in and goes, "The front door's open." And we said, yeah, it's a public meeting. We have to find that balance between physical security and being open to the public. And,
Right.
and now we've got somebody posted at the door that goes back to the equipment to make sure that nobody goes back there and things like that. But, it is about transparency and being open to the public. So that's why we post all of our meeting notices. We run our canvassing board meetings in the sunshine, and that we have a observation room that people can come and watch us canvass the vote by mail ballots.
Does the election office have security there? I know, like when you go into the county commission,
Right.
you have to walk through security. Is the supervisor of elections similar?
No, we're just behind that
Behind the glass?
we're behind that security downtown, but it's like other meetings. We do have security there on election night and stuff like that.
And what about the tabulators? Where do they come from? Where do you get the tabulators?
So we use ES&S. It's one of the 2 approved companies approved by the state of Florida, and most of the counties in Florida use that. So of the 67 counties, I think it's about 39, 40 of them use ES&S. Those others use Dominion. But as I would say is that one person in the association, across my colleagues, that really pushed that clear ballot audit to where everyone's scanning all the ballots again to make sure that they're accurate is someone who uses Dominion, right? So we all have that same desire and wanting to make sure that the votes are accurate, the count's accurate, and so we share. As I say, we always loved it as the Escambia County Commission when City of Milton or City of Pensacola or Santa Rosa County would take the headlines away from us for a little bit. I don't ever want to see a supervisor in the headlines for anything other than something good, because
Right.
that impacts the entire state, right? I'd say the state of Florida has worked hard at becoming the golden elections being known for how well
Gold
we run
standard.
elections, the gold
Yeah.
standard for elections.
And David Stafford had a lot to do with that
Right.
because he was invited to various functions and conferences all over the United States where he actually taught the people what we're doing here in Escambia County.
Yes,
So that's been passed down to you.
it has.
And so those are kind of big shoes to fill, though.
They are. Again, I got to run 4 elections with him, and so
In what capacity was that?
as a canvassing board member. So as a
Okay.
county commissioner, you're on the canvassing board, and so and I was getting ready to do that again for this election cycle when the governor tapped me. So I was
Were
familiar.
you appointed to the canvassing board, or
So the canvassing board is a 3-member panel that consists of the supervisor of elections, a county judge who serves as the chair,
one judge and one commissioner?
and then a commissioner
Okay.
or somebody appointed by the
And you
county.
were the one who was appointed.
I was
commissioner.
right. All right. I
Okay.
represented Escambia County,
Okay.
and so and we worked for 2 weeks straight leading up to the general election.
Who was the
canvassing.
judge?
So in my first time, it was Judge Kara Smith.
Okay.
And then this time I know
I probably don't even know who it is.
Judge Barry Dixon.
Okay.
And then we have some alternates and things like that. So, but again, you oversee the election. So if someone has a question as to what's on the ballot, if there's, for instance, we had a ballot that made its way into an emergency bin during early voting. That ballot has to come back in front of the canvassing board so that we can authenticate that ballot. And we knew what had happened, but it still comes back in front of us and said, yes, that's a ballot. It needs to
So
be
there's
tabulated.
one day that you meet and you go over these ballots.
So we'll meet. We'll meet a number of times.
Okay.
We're present whenever we're canvassing the vote by mail ballots.
Okay.
And then of course the
early voting.
The early voting. We're present. We're still canvassing those vote by mail ballots, so we can have a discussion if there's something that comes up. And then we'll meet first thing in the morning on election day. I'll give them an update as to what's going on, if we had any issues, anything going on with equipment, or if there's long lines or power outages, something like that. We'll usually canvass the vote by mail ballots that we get that morning. Then we'll recess, take a break for a little bit, and then pick back up in the afternoon, and then go through the end of election night.
Okay. Sounds like a very focused kind of position. I like that.
It is. It's very detail
I like
oriented.
things that I can just sit there and focus on,
Well,
and not have any distractions and just focus.
So
on.
that
would be fun.
We have a county someone from the county attorney's office with us, and so if we have questions, we pull out the statutes and review it, and we have that discussion. So if we're say we're debating on if someone's signature matches, we'll pull up the comparisons and we'll look at them, and it may be a 2-1 vote or a 1-2 vote or a 3-0 vote, but we sit there and discuss it, and my job is to say what the law states, and then see if
Go by the law.
we go
Yeah.
by the law.
So,
Go ahead.
okay. So, how do you promote voter education? Like, how do you inform the public how to register to vote and to identify misinformation and disinformation?
So we do have outreach. We'll go to different events and try to register to votes. Of course, you have parties that are helping register to vote, and so we work with both sides to do that. We also so we'll send out a sample ballot to every registered voter that has not asked for a vote by mail ballot. And that will have the locations of the early vote sites. It'll have what's on their ballot. It'll have their precinct information, and just some other general knowledge information about the election. So that's one way that we communicate. So for instance, we have we had a precinct that called last week and said, hey, we're going to be under construction in August and November. We can't serve as a precinct location.
Wow. Right.
And so we immediately found something in the vicinity, and state statute says that I have between 30 and 15 days before the election to send out
Was
that
that the
information.
Episcopal Church down here?
No, that's another one though.
Yeah, that was one.
So that one's going out, but this was off of 9th Avenue.
Yeah.
And And so we have to get that information out to the voters. And then
Right,
actually,
yeah.
one of the, but yes,
Because
if
somebody's going to the same place for 40 years,
Correct.
they're going to go to that place,
Right.
and they're going to be like, well, where do I vote
and
now?
we'll
Now I gotta
post
drive somewhere
notices
else.
at that location and let them know
Yeah.
that it's been moved. Like I said, we've emailed, we're going to send a letter to every voter that's moved. But actually, one of the things is one of the bigger things that I focused on coming in was finding a replacement for the genealogy branch library on 9th Avenue. That was our most popular early voting location. And so, of course, we're very
So
thankful.
now you can't go.
That's right. So the city gave that building back to PSC, and so the library closed, and PSC is using it for its students. We had hoped, and again, they've been wonderful at hosting us all those years. We just couldn't find something right now. They have
Seems
some buildings
like
coming
PSC
up.
would have a place as many
Well,
buildings as they have.
But again, you're looking at something that you're asking someone to give you an 8-day to 13-day
Yeah.
commitment,
Yeah, that's
which
hard,
is tough.
especially
but
during school.
during school, you have parking, everything like that. But of course, we look forward to working with PSC in the future as they have other buildings come online and being a part of that future plan. But Ashbury Place, Cokesbury, was able to host us, and so it's right across the street from the genealogy branch. It's still on 9th Avenue. You still
good,
have
yeah.
good
So it's
ingress,
right there.
egress with the traffic light at College.
Perfect.
And so hopefully, and we're getting ready to send all the voters that have voted early at that location since 2020 a letter letting them know of the change, because they let me know they weren't too happy with where they were put in March. It was a little bit more difficult to find,
Yeah.
and so it was tough. Again, that was our most popular early voting location, and so we really wanted something that was going to be comparable.
Right, yeah.
How do you know that deceased voters are actually removed from the voter rolls?
Sure.
How does that happen?
So we get notices from Department of Vital Statistics, things like that, that will do.
The Social Security Administration?
Social Security Mission is also one that'll do it. We've had people contact us and bring us the death certificate. That'll do it. The other thing that the state has started since I've been here is that if you surrender your driver's license in another state, they've started to let us know so we can start that process. Again, so it's the communication with the state is key for us to continue to update these. But yes, the vital statistics and Social Security are two ways that we identify voters who are deceased.
What about an obituary from a newspaper?
We need that death certificate
Won't
or
work.
the communication
Is that
from the
according
state.
to law?
Yes.
Okay, so by law, you can't accept
Right.
just an obituary from a
Correct.
newspaper because that's not a legal document?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So I have a question. If someone is registered to vote here in Escambia County, but they move to, say, Bethesda, Maryland, I'm just going to throw that out of a hat, and they register to vote there, and they vote in two places, does the system pick that up?
So it's a felony, to do that.
But do you get caught?
Eventually. So I have worked with the elections crimes, giving them even right before the 22-month retention was over.
Do they treat it as a serious felony?
They do. They do. And so, we actually had one of the cases that came in front of the canvassing board was that we had someone who had voted in Leon County in the 2020,
Right.
and so they voted provisionally with us. And when we did our research, we said no, this person's voted in Leon County, and we didn't accept the ballot.
Okay.
And so,
Does that happen a lot?
not
Because
that
it seems like people might just
right.
get, I'm going to get a mail-in ballot from Escambia County, but I'm going to go vote in person in Maryland, and these two states aren't going to know.
Eventually, we do, as what I'd say. So, even with, I know that there was someone who, but no, eventually we do, and we work with that department to make sure they get all the information and make sure they can prosecute and find people that have done that.
Wow.
But again, much more difficult to do it within the state of Florida because of the system that we use.
Okay.
Very good, yes.
Well, it's nice to have you on as a co-host.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank you, Robert, for coming. It was very informational. Would you like to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I just appreciate the fact that there are so many multiple steps to ensure the election integrity is accurate. The election ballots are counted accurately, and you have not just one means, but many means to verify that. I think that's very encouraging to people.
Yeah, and I would say we have redundant procedures to our redundant procedures.
Yeah.
Our poll workers do a great job in the evening, especially in the primary when you have 3 different ballot styles at each one, of counting those ballots and making sure that our count is accurate at the end of the night. And if it's not, even if we're one off, we're still going to investigate and figure out why that's off.
Right.
Yeah. So this hour goes by too fast. I
It
wanted to
does.
ask you about the training of the poll watchers and the poll workers. We just don't have enough time.
Yeah.
So we have to have you back on.
That sounds great. I'll be happy to.
So the Thornton Review is on the air to provide public service awareness and intellectual infrastructure to our community. You can watch our program on Pensacola Urban Network, Praise TV on WBQP 12.1 and 12.8, Praise TV on Roku Television Network, or download Praise TV on Google Play Store. Our website, thethorntonreview.com, and our Facebook page, The Thornton Review Show. This show was made possible by Ida Gates, Godly Teas LLC, Alpha Fence Company, our guest, Robert Bender, Escambia County Supervisor of Elections. We thank our co-host, John Roberts, for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. And we thank you for watching this episode of the Thornton Review. Bye-bye. Hi, I'm Pueschel Schneier, Executive Producer and Manager of the Thornton Review. I'm also the Secretary of the Escambia County Republican Party. I want to urge you to conserve the integrity of our constitutional republic and vote Republican. For reliable information you will always count on, watch the Thornton Review. We interview local elected officials. You will not get this information anywhere else but the Thornton Review.
Hello, I'm John Roberts. I'm currently chairman of the Republican Party here in Escambia County, and I want to urge everyone, every citizen of this county to register and vote. We have a very important election coming up this November, and you need to be involved. An informed electorate is extremely important for our nation. One way you can be informed here in Escambia County is to listen to the Thornton Review, where you hear elected officials and community leaders tell you what they are thinking and what they are doing. It's a great source of information. So I hope you'll listen. I hope you'll register and vote. And if you want to strengthen our constitutional republic and you want to preserve and strengthen our free market enterprise system, then I hope that you will vote Republican. Thank you very much.